All right. OBS was about to crash there, and I just let it figure itself up. All right. So, well, no, it's not either of that. So, WUBRG. This is the constructed set review of Phyrexia All Will Be One, starting with white. But as everybody tells me, for content creators, videos like this, you should be talking about doing the YouTube stuff at the beginning of videos. So, if you are watching on Twitch live, hey man, YouTube or !YT will bring you to the page. I'm going to start posting there again. But if you're on the YouTube rewatching this, hey man, smash that like button and the notification bell, subscribe, comment, do it all right here, bruh. All right. Now, we're going to start with white. But beforehand, Phyrexia All Will Be One will be released on Arena and Magic and MTGO online on the same day, I think. All right. But it releases on Arena on the 7th. All right. Which is a Monday. WotC, for some reason, loves to change the day every damn time that a set releases. The last one was on Thursday, and it pissed me off. But now it's on a Monday. All right. So, white is first. And we're going to go in alphabetical order. All right. And we're going to talk about a lot of cards that I think are legitimately, possibly, or traps. But we're going to talk about ones that are constructed playable. And not just standard, but the majority of standard. Excuse me. So, and here we go. Annex Sentry. 1 white, 2 colorless, artifact creature, Phyrexian Cleric. 1/4, Toxic 1. Toxic is the new mechanic of the Phyrexia. Alright, Toxic. Players dealt combat damage by a creature also get a poison counter. So if it says Toxic 2, 3, 4, Infinity, they get that many poison counters. When Annex Sentry enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until it leaves the battlefield. I put this in here because the majority of the time, we always get one of these per set. Like Brutal Cathar, Sentry, Skyclave Apparition, and many others. The problem with this card, however, and I think this is a trap, and this is probably the worst one we've seen in a while, is not only is it a 1/4, but it's an artifact. And anytime you see artifact, creature, or artifact period in a set where a braid is legal, I just want to move on. Alright? But I put this on here to show everybody that this, while good, because it hits more than just creatures, it hits artifacts, which count as creatures also. But it's 3, or mana value 3, not 4, which is what Skyclave Apparition was. And the fact that this is an artifact really turns me off. Alright? And Toxic really doesn't matter here. It's all about what the effect does, because your 3 mana drops have to do something when they enter the battlefield. They can't just do stuff, which this does do. However, for constructed playability, we have so many of them in standard and in older formats, but the fact that this is an artifact and virtually every card or every color in every deck has one. For example, white has Lauren, which is seeing as many as 4 in the main deck. Grixis plays a Braid. Green has Tear Asunder, and blue just bounces it. And black has a million ways to kill this, although it does dodge Go for the Throat. However, some others play Infernal Grasp, but there are artifacts and enchantments are very, very easy to be dealt with. All right, so not really too high on this one, but if you need a niche Brutal Cathar, yeah, also dies the Cut Down. Even worse. Yeah, I'm off this. All right. Bladed Ambassador. 1 white, 1 colorless, Phyrexian Soldier, 3/1. Bladed Ambassador enters the battlefield with an oil counter. And you pay 1 and remove said oil counter. And Bladed Assassin gains indestructible until end of turn. White gets another one of these. indestructible, Season Hollowblade type cards. This one just happens to get an oil counter. Oil is another mechanic, and it counts towards modified. And there's a creature that we'll talk about later that deals with oil counters specifically. And while I don't think this is Season Hollowblade, because Season Hollowblade is the best of the bunch, 3 power, 1 toughness for 2 is still good on rate. And if this blocks anything, or if anything blocks it and you're trading up and a virtual removal spell, it's still good enough. Will it see play? Possibly. It is a soldier, so white gets another 2-drop soldier where there's a billion of them. Is it a good enough 2-drop to play? I think they're loaded at 2-drops. I think what you're wanting to get is 1s. But if you're playing against Grixis, what kills this? Like, they have to spend 2 spells to kill it, right? Does die to Bloodthirsty or Bloodtithe Harvester. Bloodtithe Harvester, but everything dies to that with Fable and many others. So it's probably good enough, but not good enough in multiples. Like, you probably play it as an extra of something. So like an extra 2-drop. So you have like 4 of something, and then you play this as like a round out of like a 2. All right, baby. There she is. All right. Elish Norn, Mother of Machines. 4 colorless, 1 white. Legendary Phyrexian Praetor, 4/7 Vigilance. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers again. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. Chat, this card's busted. All right. It's easy to cast with 1 white and 4 colorless, so you can splash this very, very easily. A 5-drop that's a 4/7. Are you kidding me? Like, so she costs 2 less from her earlier, and she's still a 4/7, and still has Vigilance. Her entering the battlefield, and basically you get a Panharmonicon, and your opponents don't get anything. So you got like multiple cards in one. This card is very, very good. And obviously it's going to see play. The question is what deck wants it? Because mono white mid-range, I don't think wants this card because it costs a lot. The first thing I thought about doing with this was with Storm the Festival. And there are a lot of cards that you can use to enable the Storm the Festival, right? So like, you got Mightstone and Weakstone. You got a bunch of 3 and 4 drops. Like, I know Lauren, you could get multiple stuffs. I have no idea what in black you'll use, because the majority of your black cards are not entering the battlefield and doing stuff. They're already doing stuff when they're already in play, where they have triggered abilities on when, opponents draw cards or when they die. Not so much when they enter the battlefield. This is a Bant card or a Jund card. Like, for example, I said Jund and I did not mean to say Jund. I meant to say like a Mardu card or a Naya card. So like, for example, you could use this with, you could still splash it in Jund. Just what I want to do with this is you get multiple triggers off of sagas. So like, you get multiple triggers off of, say, Fable the Mirror Breaker when it enters the battlefield, or you play this with, say, I don't know, Kami, the Kami, the war, right? So like, you play this on 5 and you cast Kami, and Kami now exiles 2 permanents, right? And it's easy to cast. And yeah, sagas triggering twice on the first chapter is relevant. So like you get I know this is like really, really magical Christmas land, but you could use this with Founding the Third Path, where you get to cast two spells of 2 mana value or less. You get what's like some good sagas in this format? I have no idea. But there's a lot of things you could do with this. Oh, and by the way, it stops opponent sagas. So like they don't enter the battlefield with a counter. Or rather, they enter with a counter, but they don't get the first chapter. All right? And you can't Brutal Cathar it. So yeah, this card's so good. It's just, you got to find a place for it. And I don't think mono white's where you want to be. I think you just got to splat. Like, I'm looking at Bant right now with Storm the Festival, because you get, like, double triggers off your Mightstone and Weakstone. You get multiple triggers off of all your sagas. Yeah, Brutal Cathar exiles 2 things, but it's very fragile, right? All right, Elesh Norn, one of the top cards in white. Like, not even close, right? I put this in here and I didn't mean to. I thought when I first read this card, all right, I thought it said when it entered the battlefield you got a might, but it's when the equipped creature attacks, and it doesn't automatically equip when it enters the battlefield. So I'm just gonna move on. All right, Kemba, Ka Enduring, 1 white, 1 colorless, legendary cat cleric, 2/2. When Kemba enters the battlefield, or another cat, excuse me. When Kemba or another cat enters the battlefield under your control, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to that creature. Equipped creatures you control get +1/+1. 2 white, 3 colorless. Create a 2/2 white cat creature token. Chat, the only thing I want to do with this is I want to cast this in Explorer, and I get to get I get to put Hammer on it for free. That's it. And I kill them on turn 2. That's all I want to do with this. I don't think this is good enough in Standard. This is just a Hammer card. That's all I want to do with this. Cast this, put Hammer on it, and you get to play kitties and a bunch of cats, and you get to play Hammer, and you don't have to play bad cards to do it. You just got Kemba. And honestly, you could play Kemba, and you can splash, like play red-white and splash black for Claim to Fame, because it's a 2-drop, and you get it back and it attach it. Like every time it hits, you get to put it back into play, and you get the Hammer back. So like, this card seems like a meme, but when you think about it further, like this card seems really good. At least in those older formats where you get to play Hammer. Hammer time, again, same thing, right? The rest of it is just flavor text, right? Mondrak Glory Dominus. 2 white, 2 colorless, legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror. 4/4. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. 1 colorless, 2 Phyrexian white. Sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, and put in an indestructible counter on Mondrak Glory Dominus. So normally, whenever you get a threat that is a callback to another permanent that wasn't a threat, in this case, Anointed Procession, right? That's basically what this is, except now it's a 4/4 creature. Normally when you see those, the threat is better than the permanent. So like, Mondrak is better than Anointed Procession. Although it does die easier, it's still a threat that could still kill your opponent without having to do anything, right? It's just a creature. I have no idea what deck wants this. Because it doesn't curve into Fable. And what other tokens are you creating? Right? Again, this feels like a Bant card, but it could be anything else. I just don't know what deck wants this. It's powerful, but I don't know what deck wants this. And there's only 2 decks in Standard that might actually play this, but also I got nothing. Because most of these cards I've seen, like, you know, in passing, but I didn't really get to take a good look at them. And this one I didn't really think was too good, in the sense of more of it's powerful. It's just I don't know, like, what you're doing with it, because there's not very many token generators, and the majority of them are already in play or we already cast them, except this one, right? So, like, it's good, but it doesn't feel mythic-y, if that makes sense. Norn's Wellspring, 1 white, 1 colorless, artifact, so a 2-drop. Whenever a creature you control dies, scry 1 and put an oil counter on Norn's Wellspring. 1 colorless and tap. Remove 2 oil counters from Norn's Wellspring and draw a card. I put this in here strictly to show you all what a trap looks like, and this card is a trap. Alright? You have to play this on 2, alright? And normally your 2-drops are like... Alright, so like, for example, compare this to the 2-drop soldier, the Azorius 3/2 fly. Like, it does literally everything, right? It's a 3/2, it flies, and then compare it to this. This thing doesn't do anything, right? What deck wants this where you're hoping you can play this, like, after a 1-drop, and there's so many better things to do with this, or rather, there's so many better things than this card, and you have to have 2 creatures die, not just 1. You have to have 2, and you're only netting a half a card off of this. Like, this is like, if you're comparing this to a lot of cards, you would compare it to, say, Transmogrift's Crown, where you draw a card and when it dies, but it has to be equipped. But it doesn't take too much to equip it, right? And all the other cards, or all the other stuff at 2 that draws a card, if you're able to get it to do that. Like, for example, not only Transmogrift Crown, but Tenacious Underdog, right? Costs more, but you draw the card afterwards after you blitz. Right? And you're always drawing a card. So you do it multiple times. This card, you have to spend way more mana to get the payoff of drawing a card. This card's a trap. Oh, and heaven forbid they abrade this thing. Now this is a card. Alright, Ossification. 1 white, 1 colorless, enchantment aura. Enchant a basic land you control. When Ossification enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Ossification leaves the battlefield. There's also another one that does virtually the same thing, but it's Arrest, but it costs 2. I don't know if I have that in here. Exiling a creature or planeswalker for 2 mana is very good. I don't know. So white already has, you know, Lay Down Arms. So you get Lay Down Arms and this. Like, you have 8 removal spells, essentially. Albeit sorcery speed. But they're 8 removal spells for creatures and 4 for planeswalkers. Right? And this... Yeah, 8 great removal spells, by the way. A little bit of a nombo with the fact that your opponents could also have Lauren, but I don't know if that matters or not. But again, there's the Arrest card. I don't know if I have that on here or not. But we have this, and being able to exile anything you want. This also goes well with Sarah Paragon, right? So, like, if they get rid of it, you can still cast it off of Paragon again and get to exile tokens or other planeswalkers again for 2 mana. And, yeah. And you don't have to worry about them, you know, using, say, Field of Ruin because it's on a basic, right? So, this seems very, very good. I just don't know if you're casting it over, you know, Fateful Absence or any of the other 2-drops, but this warrants some justification. Also, this is very good in Explorer too, because you don't have Chain to the Rocks, right? But they do play basics, so instead of playing, you know, instead of playing Chain to the Rocks, you play this. And if you're able to Enigmatic Incarnation it, they get their thing back, but you're able to get a 3-drop like Renegade Rallier and then just put it back into play and exile the same thing they had. So I think this is actually good. Like, actually playable. Because it just does whatever you want for 2 mana. Alright, chat. Here it is. Phyrexian Vindicator. 4 white. Yeah, but it's any mountain. Like, not just basic. It could be any mountain. Vindicator, 4 white mana. Phyrexian horror creature, 5/5 flying. If damage would be dealt to Phyrexian Vindicator, prevent that damage. When damage is prevented this way, Vindicator deals that much damage to any other target. Alright, so I've seen a lot of people talk massive shit on this card. Chat, this card's busted. Alright? White mid-range specifically, going 2-drop Steel Seraph into Vindicator. Yo. First of all, how does red ever beat this card? And number 2, how does Azorius beat this card? Because, if you give this thing lifelink, you can't block it. Right? Like, give it vigilance, you can't block it. And this is better than Obliterator. Like, this card's absurd. You literally have to have Go for the Throat or Destroy Evil or whatever. Yeah, and it fucking flies. Right? And if you ever deal damage to it, right? It deals damage to any other target. Chat, I could dome you. So, like, let's say, for example, you have a spell that, like doesn't allow you to prevent damage, like in older formats, like Bone Crusher Giant or whatever, and you deal 5 damage to that, I still deal 5 to your fucking face. This card is through the damn roof. Like, how does anybody think this card's so bad? Like, people thought Steel Seraph was bad. This card is obnoxious. It only costs 4, and White already wanted to play something like this anyway. Like, imagine your curve is this. Like, 2-drop kill something, 3-drop Steel Seraph, 4-drop Phyrexian Vindicator, 5-drop Elspeth Resplendent, and just start making this thing huge. I think this card's, like, at least in the top 10. Like, not close. This card is so pushed to the moon. Because it flies. That's the only reason this card is even remotely playable. If it didn't fly, this card's terrible. Alright? That's literally the only reason this card's good, is because it flies. Alright? That's it. If it didn't fly, Shieldred would block this thing all day, but the fact that it flies over Shieldred is enough. Right? Because you can give it lifelink with Steel Seraph and fly over it and race it. That's the whole point of this card. Is to basically race Shieldred with Steel Seraph, and you're like, Mono White needed a card that like did everything, and that's basically why Sarah Paragon's being played, is because you need to still keep the pressure, because Steel Seraph flies. But now you don't need to play it, I don't think. You just play this, and you just play 4 of them, and your 4 drops are obnoxious. Yeah, also, by the way, Shieldred does not block this very well because in order for Death Touch to work, you have to deal damage. And if you don't deal combat damage or any damage, because the damage is prevented, this doesn't die. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So, yeah, this card's obnoxious. And not just standard either. Because in Explorer, hello, Nykthos. That card needs to be banned, by the way. Alright, Plated Onslaught. 3 colorless, 2 white, instant affinity for artifacts. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. Alright, so this wasn't spoiled or previewed. This was dropped in the full set spoiler after all of the set previews of the hype. Right, so this was kind of snuck in the full set review. So the reason I put this on here is because affinity for artifacts is not hard to get in white, especially in standard or in older formats. And number two, the fact that it only costs 2 white and is an offensive card, as in it gets +2, not +1/+2, but +2/+1, is a big deal. Now, if you have a bunch of 3 toughness creatures, you can use this and make them 4 toughness against Brotherhood's End, assuming they don't name, artifacts, obviously. But this could be a combat trick. It could be your reach spell. And if you're probably playing a bunch of artifacts anyway, so this is mostly probably going to cost at least minimum 3 mana. Your ceiling is obviously 2, but it doesn't take much. Like on its face, people are like, but I mean, red-white, imagine giving this to anything with double strike. Like, lizard blades. Right? So, and if you're playing a bunch of white spells or a bunch of artifacts, it ain't gonna take much. Right? Yeah. So, I'm not saying this is like pushed to the moon or anything. Just, this is one of those things where, like in standard, in Explorer, you got, what's that card called? Brave the Elements, where like you push through the last points of damage. This is basically what that is, right? And if you have a bunch of flying artifacts, there you go. Skrelv Defector Might. 1 artifact or legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might. 1/1 toxic 1. Phyrexia or Defector Might can't block. 1 Phyrexia white tap, choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from a color or from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. We've had Mother of Ruins type cards before, and this is exactly that. And it gets toxic. So you're always getting the toxic part. I don't know if there's ever a point where you're able to, to untap it. But giving anything hexproof from a color, like black or red or whatever, is a big deal. It's not protection, but it's virtually protection. I'm not sure if the artifact deck or the artifact robots or whatever needed a card like this. But being able to protect your own stuff and you don't have to tap mana, you can just pay life. And it's not hard, and it's in a color where you get lifelink, right? And Esper Legends, that's a good shout too, where you get to basically protect your Rafine for free, right? Because you don't care about taking that much damage. And with ward creatures, it's like, are you gonna pay the ward? Okay, cool. All right, now it gets hexproof. So this is very scary. Because it doesn't seem scary. Because it's just a 1/1 for 1. But you have to kill this creature first. And the artifact part, it's just a legendary 1/1 for 1. And being able to protect all your stuff, and you don't have to keep up mana, I don't think you understand how powerful that is. Because Mother of Ruins, you didn't need to have mana either. And it was just like, and you could protect itself, right? So you could block whatever, give it protection from the color, and you had to have a way to kill it, right? So don't sleep on this. I'm putting it in a bunch of my white artifact aggro decks that we're brewing that I'll show off. All right. Skrelv's Hive. 1 white, 1 colorless enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with toxic 1, and this creature cannot block. Corrupted. Corrupted is a new mechanic. Corrupted basically is as long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control have toxic, or creatures you control with toxic have lifelink. All right, so this is not Bitter Blossom, okay? But it is better than the War of the Sparkborn, in that this wants you to attack, and it incentivizes you to have a bunch of creatures with toxic. And the first thing I wanted to do with this was to play Esper or blue-white and play a bunch of artifact stuff. And the toxic part, you're able to also use, Proliferate, which is also in, which we haven't talked about yet. So while this isn't Bitter Blossom, it's virtually close enough to Bitter Blossom. And the fact that you get artifacts off of this does come in handy, or is synergistic with Wormlet and many other cards that do the same thing, right? And there's a card in the multicolor that I wanted to pair this with that you could pseudo get a bunch of artifacts into play every turn. All right. I actually thought about this today. I was building it while, sitting with the Munchkin waiting for brunch. I think this is only good enough in Standard, though. I don't think this is good enough in any other format, because I think it's too slow. Swooping Lookout. 1 white artifact, Phyrexian Construct, 1/2 Flying Vigilance. All right, chat, you're probably thinking, YouTubers also, why the hell do you have a 1/2 1-drop artifact creature on this list? Okay, chat, a long time ago, there was a 1-drop that had flying and lifelink. It was a 1/1. That card saw constructed play. Okay? You know what this is? This is better than that. Because it's a 1/2. And it flies. And it has vigilance. Okay? The artifact aggro deck is really where this wants to be. This pairs really well with Yoshin Dissident. Or Yosha Dissident? Whatever. Alright? If you're able to make this bigger, this is an offensive card. The only reason this card's on here is because it has vigilance. Okay? But it flies. This has like a million keywords on a 1/2, and it only costs 1. Alright? This can wear anything. It could wear equipment. Chat, there's a lot of cards that we haven't seen play in like a couple of months that are in, say, because Innistrad is still in Standard. So like Angel Fire Ignition is still a card, right? you got some equipment that automatically get equipped to this. But aggro decks have a lot. There's also a construct. So if you find a way to make a bunch of 0/0 constructs, this counts. But the fact that there's a 1/2 flying vigilance for 1, and it already is in decks or has the type to be in those aggro decks is why this card is on here. This is like one of these sleepers, right? And the best part about it is it's an offensive and defensive card. Because, like, for example, this card is absurd against soldiers, right? If I ever make this a 3/4, how do they beat this card? Like, basically playing Simeon or the Spirit Guide that gives 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Now it's a 3/4. Good luck. If I have Steel Seraph also, yeah, you got Cathar, but I mean, like, you only have 4, right? Whereas I have a crap ton of threats. Let's go on, Medine. But again, a 1-drop, chat. The 1-drops in this set are obnoxious. All of them. All right. The Eternal Wanderer. 2 white, 4 colorless, legendary planeswalker. We got planeswalkers that are rare, that have static abilities and no true ultimate. All right. 5 starting loyalty, +1. Exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of that player's next end step. 0, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with double strike. -4, each player chooses a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. Or excuse me, for each player. Chat, let me explain something to you. Number 1, this card is the kill condition. I'm going to explain why here in a second. Number 1, the static ability reads, no more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat. Meaning, you can't send the whole team at her. Alright? Number 2, on my turn, I exile one of your creatures. The opponent's creatures. Right? You don't get that back until the end step of your turn. Meaning, if I sweep the whole board and you get a creature back, I can exile it and now you can't deal with this. Alright? I can also exile my own stuff and I get it back the same turn and I get the ETB effect. The 0 is basically a 4/4, but it doesn't minus, meaning I could just keep doing this. All right. The -4, okay? I want you to read the -4 again. It says, for each player, choose a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. This is basically, not all the way, but basically tragic arrogance. All right? I get to keep my best creature, and you get your worst creature. That's what that says. Oh, and by the way, if it has indestructible, doesn't matter, gets sacrificed. Alright? And you can only attack with the 1 creature I gave you. But again, like I said, it's probably the worst one. What's going on, Mike? This card is better than people think it is. This card's good. Alright? White already had good top end. They had what's the stupid card? Besides Farewell, they had Sanctuary Warden. That card's obnoxious. Oh, imagine pairing that with this. No, White wasn't lacking, man. In my opinion, it wasn't lacking. Okay? There's nothing at +6. You didn't need anything at +6. You had Sanctuary Warden, Farewell, and a bunch of, and Steel Seraph at 7. Like, I never had a problem closing out games with White. No, you don't want 8/6 drops. This is like your so this card doesn't go in mono white, I don't think. I want to play with this in the Awaken the Woods. Like to accelerate into this on like turn 4, where I get to play this on turn 4, turn 5. Yeah, this is a control card. But again, this could end a game very, very easily. All right. I don't think this is good enough in any other format but standard, though. But I'd be proven wrong, but it costs too much. This is a standard card all the way. Powerful, but only standard. Vial of Assimilation. 1 white, 1 colorless artifact. Whenever Vial of Assimilation or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. I put this on here because there's an artifact aggro deck somewhere, and this goes in it. You go Teething Wormlet on 1, and you play this on 2. Teething Wormlet's a 3/3, and it gains vigilance. So you attack for 3, gain 1 life, deal 3 damage, and it still be able to block as a 2/2. Then the next turn, every time you cast an artifact, or rather, when another artifact enters the battlefield, you're now just continuously hitting with those creatures, right? Imagine you go Wormlet, then this, then Steel Seraph. Like, this card's good. Like, this is like one of those things where it keeps you attacking and blocking. Good against the aggro decks to be able to keep the pressure on while also making your creatures bigger and block, and making your creatures bigger to attack through, to where you like break the symmetry of the game. But that's it. That's the only reason I want to play with this card, is just strictly with Wormlet. This set has so many bangers. Like, this set's obnoxious, man. Like, it's not even being optimistic. It's just like there are so many support cards for all of the archetypes that it's just like this set is all about building around stuff. And all of the cards say that. They're just not like any powerful things on their own. Like, there's a lot of powerful stuff, don't get me wrong. But like, even the commons and uncommons are like very good. And we've already went through some, and like, obviously in white, Elish Norn and Vindicator, the mythics are like mythic-y, but even the commons and uncommons are good, especially Vial and the 1-drop that we talked about. And all the 1-drops are good. Like, I don't know how you have so many choices. This one, again, like I said, I can only imagine this in standard, but I could see a world where you play this with like the affinity deck. I mean, standard was already a grind fest, so but yeah, but you could play this in anything else, right? You could play this with you could play this in the artifact aggro deck, or you could find a way to splash and, you know, play this in Mardu and make, you know, use it with, say, I don't know, the Anvil, or you play red white and you sacrifice this to, you know, any of the artifact sacrifice stuff and get stuff. Like, there's so many things you could do with this. And that's like this, you're going to see a lot of, what is it called? Like, that's going to be the theme of this whole set is you could do a lot with this, and you just got to figure it out. A lot of the cards in this set are like build around me, pick me's, and build around cards, right? So we get to do all that. And last but not least, White Sun's Twilight. 2 white X sorcery. You gain X life and create X 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. So, chat's talking about the sun cards in standard, and white's really good. I have no idea how good this card is, but this is not to be put in your toxic deck. I don't know. So like there was a card before this that gave you soldiers, and I think it costs like less, but But it basically did the same thing. Like, it destroyed all other creatures except this. And the major problem with this card specifically is it doesn't scale very well. As in, the early scaling is not good. The problem with Mites, which is why I thought the Hive card was not good, or not that as good, is because the Mites, much like, this sort of suffers the same problem as, like, Poppet Stitcher, where tokens in the early game are for blocking, and then you go so wide that you make them huge and then attack for lethal. But the problem with Mites is they can't block. So you're not saving yourself anything. Does this go with the Hive? I have no idea. But going wide with Toxic, though, seems like a deck. Because with poison counters, you only need 10 damage. And the way this reads, right, is it's not like Infect. Okay? Infect doesn't deal damage. It deals its damage as poison. This gives poison counters but still deals damage. So you're still dealing. So, like, for example, if you give an opponent 10 poison counters, they're probably at 10 life, assuming they didn't, like, gain any life or whatever. So this might be relevant. I'm not sure. Right, that's basically what it does. Is the Toxic is a better, in my opinion, Toxic is better than Infect as a mechanic. Because you don't have to worry about, oh crap, well I didn't do it, so like. All right, but that's all the white cards. If there are white cards that you think are, I mean, there's no way they were ever making this an instant, like, ever. But if there's cards that I didn't talk about, make sure to put it in the comments below. Comment what you think are actual playable standard cards in the set. And there were 16. There might be more. A couple of sleepers in there too. But let me know, and don't forget to, again, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll go to the next one. We're going to blue cards. All right, see you then. Twitchers, we're moving on. YouTubers, you got to wait till the next video. All right.